Here's an unusual request. This person asked, I'd appreciate if you would do a video of arbitrary color in paintings like Matisse sometimes did. Yeah, you know, that's going to be fun. Well, just as a little bit of background, you know, before the 18th century, in painting, color was used more to describe images. And, you know, artists didn't think much beyond that until the Impressionists came along. And when the Impressionists started observing that color did different things according to how the light was hitting. They started looking at color as having another function, and that function was more interpretive. And then as time went along, the art movements all pretty much grew out of those original Impressionist ideas. And so artists began to explore other things that could be a little different perhaps in art. And one of those is, if you use color, do you have to use it to describe? So that was in the post-impressionist, right after the impressionists had their fling. The post-impressionists began to do different things with color in paintings. And Matisse was one of those. And here is one, you might say, example of arbitrary color. Arbitrary color means the color is not determined by what the image, or by the color on the image. The color is not determined by the color on the image. The artist just decides arbitrarily or randomly what color is going to be used. And so just because, in this case, Matisse is sticking kind of close to some of the skin tones, but just because the skin tones are in the orange or red-orange range, some artists would even use blue or purple. And you know, it kind of reminds you of the poem of The Purple Cow. But we see all kinds of uses of color, and that began a movement, and it was labeled arbitrary color. So I want to show you a little bit about how arbitrary color works. Now, Matisse used it in a way that the images are flatter. If you'll notice, there's a little recognition of shadow here, and a little recognition of shadow here, but you see the images are really flattened out. If you'll notice that on the shadow side of what he's indicated, here's the shadow side of the image, instead of that going darker, you notice it goes more yellow. So he's sort of got kind of a very, very light pink or red in here, and then we have this sort of repeated in here. And then he's got this blue background on this side, the violet here, red violet here, and red orange here, which I'm sure was not the background that he was looking at. So you see the colors were chosen arbitrarily, but not necessarily used arbitrarily. So I thought I'd do something that's sort of fun. You're either going to love it, you're going to hate it, or you won't care. So I just have picked a photo of a cow here, and I've already done a little preliminary drawing here just to set it up. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but just to give you an idea how you might go about it. Now, if I'm going to change the color, and this is something I'm not in the habit of doing, but if I were of a mind that I wanted to use arbitrary color, I would allow the values to determine, because I am so fascinated by the light and shadow of things that I wouldn't be able to help myself. And so what I would do there is to follow the light and shadow pattern, but not follow the color pattern. So you can just sort of select whatever colors, or decide the colors you're going to use randomly. They don't have to, if you're using arbitrary color, there may be no relationship whatsoever to the color you use to the color or the local color that you're looking at. Now, one thing that you will notice about the artists during that era is that their colors made sense. Their colors did have some relationship on the color wheel, and as they're developing their composition, they are developing the composition according to keeping a color relating the colors that are chosen, having some relationship to each other as we see them on the wheel. So I'm going to make a choice, and this is a rather almost a tight choice to kind of show you how you might play with that idea, and do play with it just to have the experience to see what can happen. But one thing that you can do is to decide on a minimum of 3 colors that you'll put on your palette, and colors that have some relationship on the color wheel. And because I wanted to do something here totally crazy with the arbitrary color idea, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose red, violet, and blue. Red, violet, and blue to put on the palette, and I'm going to choose a warm color opposite those as a way of adding some variation in their saturation. You'll find most arbitrary color paintings done in arbitrary color are pretty highly saturated, but no, not always completely saturated. Now later on, the Fauvists came in. They were called the wild painters, where and I think they might be included in that arbitrary color, because they too are using color sort of randomly to express some sort of a violent or wild or angry mood. Usually it is more angry than it is happy. So aside from that, let's just go ahead and start throwing something together here just to show you briefly and quickly how we can use arbitrary color while we are observing the value. So I'm going to pull out here red, violet. This is for my tube colors, this is quinacridone violet. And I'm going to pull out ultramarine blue, which is a blue that leans towards violet. So I'll just pull it out right here. And I'm going to pull out a red orange, which is the Rembrandt transparent oxide red. I'm just going to pull those 3. Those are the only colors I want to use, but I am going to use white. So I'll pull some white down on my palette here and spread it out here so I can reach into it in various areas without and still have control over it. Random, arbitrary. So that means that you could start anywhere using any color. So I'm just going to do that. So what I'll do here is I'll go into the white here first of all, and I'll reach into the red, violet, and so I see that the area back here is sort of a middle value. So I will just make a middle value, and I'm going to use red, violet. So I'm choosing the value I see, but a random color, an arbitrary color. You see how that can be fun? And so I'll just start brushing that in. And I don't have to necessarily pay attention to the gradations or the other even textures, because if I'm using arbitrary color, I might be using the other attitudes that we found in that era when arbitrary painting first came into being, and we might just ignore textures, or we might ignore gradations or other things like that, and just sort of plant something there that is totally different from what we see. So I'm just going to do a portion of this because if I did the whole thing, this quick tip would not be a quick tip. It would be way too long. So I'm just going to just going to place things here to show you something that you might do with it. And I'm going to take kind of an additive and throw a little bit of blue in here now, just for fun. That was an arbitrary decision. No, I had no reason for doing it. I just decided that's what arbitrary. One of those characteristics of arbitrary is you can just make a decision and do something. So now I could continue that. I'm just going to do a section, as I said before, to show you. I know that irritates some people, not a lot of people. Some people understand I'm simply showing you a method to get you started. That's my idea. I'm not interested in performing for you. I just want to show you a method of doing something. And so I won't do a finished piece here, but some people do get a little disturbed. They want to see what else I would do. Well, Uh, that's not what I'm interested in showing you. All right, so I've done that now. I might change now. I might change midstream, and might even rinse the brush off in this case and change midstream, and then might just go totally different. I just think maybe I'll just take some blue for that as it gets darker here. I think I'll just take some blue. And you see, I'm keeping that relatively. I'm going to let it darker in value. You see, here we go. Now there we go. That is typical of arbitrary color, where you have something that just doesn't. It's not logical necessarily. Let me just sort of get that. So I'm just sort of mix up like that, and just put it, place it, but keeping it. I like keeping it in the value range as I said before. Now I might also, because I'm interested in showing a relationship, I may also then, I might come up here. This time I might come up here on this side and continue that blue. You see it gets darker right there. So I might continue that blue, and I might decide, all right, blue's going to be the dark, and red violet's going to be the middle value. And I might mix those two to get the lighter value. You see, I haven't used the red orange yet, and I might not. I'll put it on the palette just in case. But now that I look at it, it does get a little. I might have been influenced by the orange I see in that cow, or that red orange I see in that cow. So that's the attitude you take. Now let's just see. I'll do just a little bit to show you the attitude that you would take as you move into the cow itself. That may be a purple cow. So if I decide, okay, blue's going to be my dark, blue's going to represent areas I see dark or in shadow, and the red violet's going to represent the middle values or the transition values. And I might say, so I'm going to use violet or purple, the mixture of those two, for the lights, for where I see the lights. And so in that case, I'll begin to develop the lighter values I see, and I'll look into the lighter values of the cow here, and I'll just mix those two to get a violet. And now let's see that value. I'm going to have to put lots of light in there, lots of light, because it's really light there. So this, by the way, might be an excellent way to study value. Let me see, am I in the value range there? I really could stand to get that lighter. All right, so if I'm saying where oh no, that's not that light. You see there? So we just need to add more white to it to get it lighter. There, that is getting closer. So yeah, that's lighter. There we go. So I could say, all right, the violet is representing what I see in light, where I see the light. No, I know it doesn't make sense, but it's not supposed to. This is arbitrary color. So everywhere I see light, everywhere I see the light hitting, I can throw that violet in. And this would be sort of the approach that Matisse might take. And I see a little bit of light down in here. I see a little bit of light right over in here. I see this is the violet. Violet's going to represent the light, as I said. I see the light in the light of the horn, so we'll just do that in violet. And now just assume I have all this stuff already filled in the negative area back here. All right, so if the light is the violet, if the red violet is the middle value, then I'll go for the middle value in red violet. Now, and I'll stick pretty close to the middle value of red violet, but I'll do the same thing now. So I'll go red violet, and I'll bring it up here so I don't get that mixed up, and reach right over there into that white. And I need to get that middle value. Now this is an experiment in color. Like I said, people that you really have to, take a kind of a playful attitude when you're playing with something like this. And just take a playful attitude and, well, let's just explore the idea and see what happens. So there's a little middle value right here. So that would go there. And you see, then we begin to see what arbitrary color could do. We got a little bit of middle value coming through there. So if I say red's going to be my middle value, I have a little bit of middle value moving down here. I have some middle value over on that side, so we can do that. A little bit right there. Yeah, there's some middle value right there. A little bit right there. There's, okay, where else do I see middle value? And I could come over on this side if I wanted to, and begin to sort of get that sort of color conversation going on, where red, violet, least, red, violet, least, red, violet. Oh, I see. Let's do some more down here. A little bit more. This is kind of a dark. It's kind of pushing it to do that. And let's pull just a little bit of that down there. Now, if I said then that I was going to use blue to define the dark of the shadow, the dark value. So then I'm going to rinse the value, rinse the color of my color that represents middle value, and go into my color that represents the dark. And so we'll pull that in now. Let's just give that a little bit of variation. We can do that. We can see things in shadow all the way from in about a 5 value range, and so I've got a little bit of latitude I can play with there. So it doesn't all have to be the same value, but it needs to be a dark value. So then I could begin to do this now, where let's see, can we get a little bit of dark value going there? And I'm not trying to do an exact representation there of the cow, but just enough to show you what arbitrary color does. Remember, that's what we're doing, showing you how arbitrary color can work. This is not the only way it can work. This, as I said, this is really a more conservative way of working arbitrary color. Sometimes, like Matisse often would ignore the values totally, but I just want to show you that it too does have some broad ways it can be used. Now, I could make this a little darker right there. In fact, if I wanted to, I could make that just a little even darker, almost black right there, black blue right here. There we go, like that. Remember the hair on Matisse's woman's head? Let's put a few nostrils right in there. And then, of course, right here, we get kind of a repetition of that right up there. So I can do that. And that comes on down into the eye. So just bring that right down into the eye, that repetition. And let's get the brush reloaded just a little bit. And the same thing happens over here, doesn't it? So we have that, that ear shape there that falls into that dark value range. We see it doesn't really come over the eye like the other one does, but if I'm doing random arbitrary color, I can choose to either pay attention to that or not pay attention to it. All right, so we got that. Then we have also, I see down in here's another place where we might put that really dark, and then down here too. So we might put that really dark down here too, sort of like that, and maybe down here too, where I'm seeing those very darkest parts. Now you can kind of see here, kind of see how the arbitrary color idea can fall together. And let's do just a little bit more to show you how it can go. So within those, if you were to take this approach, where you are using the arbitrary color to describe, you're assigning a hue to each value range, like I just did with this one. Let's pull this down like that. Then within that hue, like within the hue of blue, we can get the variation. We can do a little value range of that blue, as you see me doing here. So I might just do something like that. And let's just sort of let the blue be all those middle, all those darker values that move towards middle. Whoops, that's not what blue does. Okay, I kind of misread that. So do I let that stick? If I'm doing arbitrary color, Matisse probably would let that stick. I don't know whether I want to or not. Let's see, pull that out. I don't know, maybe so. Maybe just let that stick and let it connect, even though so it sort of defies what I said I was going to do. But you know, nothing's carved in stone when you're painting. If you're painting, you're moving in a direction. As long as it's working within the context of what you're doing, then it may be good to change your mind, to change change plans midstream, we might say. So let's just see, I'm going to pull that around like that. Let's pull that around in here. Let's pull this right in here like that. And we can do the same thing, a little bit of shadow over there. And so, oh yeah, and the shadow side of the horn, we can do that too. So we just sort of push that down like that just a little bit, and sort of maybe do the same thing. Get that end flat so we make it work technically like that. And we almost have ourselves a blue-purple cow. We'll do just a little bit of tidying up to the little example here, just to kind of pull everything together. So I could use anything I want to tidy that up. Pull that together to get those colors so that we don't have white space showing through. Might even, let's do this in the violet there. There we go, like that. Maybe a little like that. And here, 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 and so on. Like that. Alright, and I could decide if I wanted to, if I want to blend some of those edges just a little bit. I'm getting a little bit more towards what I like to do in painting, but that's alright, it's my painting. I can make that decision. So that pretty much is the attitude you take with arbitrary color. Allow some organization of the decision of the colors, and I would say that perhaps limiting to 2 to 3, and certainly no more than 4 selections of hues or colors. That's a good way of keeping it, the colors belonging to each other. You don't have to assign a hue to a value. You can simply arbitrarily place those in flat shapes if you like. But it's an experiment in color where you're actually using an image, but you're totally ignoring the color of that image. Give it a try and have some fun with it. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.